That will never work. You can't fuck with yourself. Seriously? Don't. Oh my God, that's bad. You probably should find other hobbies. You ever learn how to stop? Be happy. You don't bother me. Do you really want to? And my third grade, give it up. Welcome to Horrible Writing, the rawest, most candid, in-your-face writing show on the interwebs because none of us have time to suck. Let's do this. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 40 of Horrible Writing. This time around, we are continuing our writer, author, blogger, audio dramatist interview series. And I'm really excited about this one. It's going to be a shift from some of the more personal stuff that we've talked about on the show so far to something that's a bigger picture item, but a very important item to address, especially as creatives. And I think you're going to walk away from this episode learning a lot. I know I'm going to. This time around, I have Aditi Wardhan Singh with me. She's a writer, blogger. She's the founder and editor-in-chief of Raising World Children magazine, which has got a neat vision. I'm going to read it to you real quick. The vision is to have a more unified generation that is aware and empathetic to the differences as well as similarities that we all have. She's also been featured in Thrive Global and the Huffington Post. Aditi, welcome to Horrible Writing.
Hey, Paul. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm very excited to learn a lot from you. You're going to become the teacher this morning, so I hope you're ready.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. I just hope that we can learn from each other.
I think we will. I don't know how much I have to teach, but I know you do.
Oh, you definitely have. I've been listening to a couple of your podcasts, and there is so much good stuff out there.
Well, thank you. I'm very lucky. I've had a bunch of wonderful writers like yourself, who are willing to come on and share these, sometimes really sensitive things. And I love seeing the community come together and being willing to help each other out like that.
Yes, it is important to share our stories.
It is. So let's talk about stories. You and I have been doing some talking back and forth, and you pitched a wonderful idea to me about how we need to be brave using our cultural experiences, in our writing, in our art, whatever any listener listening to this show is doing out there in the world, but tapping into and using those cultural experiences. But you caveated it for me about being brave. So what I'd love to do is first get an idea of who you are and where you've come from. I've read up on you, but the listener may not know about your background. So can you tell us a little bit about your story so we can frame it in the discussion about cultural background?
Well, I'm glad you didn't ask me where are you from or who are you exactly? Because that is something when people usually ask someone, and that is where my story starts actually. When you go to my website, that's one of the first things that people see. Initially, I used to feel like I was the girl from nowhere because when someone asks me, where are you from? I say, I was born and raised in Kuwait. I'm an Indian by birth. My father is from Banaras and my mom is a Maharashtrian. We are Rajputs, basically from Rajasthan. But being from Kuwait, I don't really know much about India as such. So yes, and India, I don't know if you know this, is very connected by religion and languages. So you really need to be able to fit into certain cliques, if I may say so. And if you don't, it's not that you don't fit in, you feel a little bit left out often. But over time, once I became a parent, I realized that it's not that I'm the girl from nowhere. It's the fact that all my experiences in my life have added up, and it's beautiful because I have experienced so much through all my friends and all my friends of friends that I'm able to share every single culture with my children today. And that's a little bit about where Raising World Children, my global platform, came from.
And I love it, and I love the concept. As I read more about what you're doing, it's a beautiful concept. It really is. So let's talk about that. What do you mean when you're talking about being brave using our cultural experiences? Understanding that most of the people who hear this episode are going to be, writers, poets, bloggers. Some visual artists do listen, but mostly it's writers.
Yes, I do understand that it is very difficult to put your story out there. For new bloggers, especially, or new writers, if you remember when you started off, Paul, it is a very hesitant feeling, right? When
Yes.
you're writing, you're like, oh, should I put this out there? Will my parents be reading it? And once you become older, will my husband be reading it? Will my ex-boyfriend be reading it? Those kind of things. And it is very difficult to put yourself out there, because when you put a piece of writing or any piece of art out there, you're basically bearing a bit of your soul. And I think it is so important for us to be able to have conversations about our perspectives, because I think in today's world, unfortunately, due to targeted social media, we are so in our own bubbles that people have forgotten to agree to disagree. And I
Yes.
think this is so important that we diversify our conversations. So when I talk about being brave, where your cultural stories are concerned, and I'm not talking about cultures in terms of arts or dance or music over here. I'm talking about cultures in terms of ways of life, which may be whatever choice of life you have, or language you speak, or city you live in, those kind of things, because life changes every 2 hours of travel. I mean, I have been to Philadelphia, which is 4 hours from here, and I find the city so beautiful, and I cannot wait to go back because it is so different from Richmond, where I live.
Hmm.
In India itself, Mumbai is so different from Bhopal, and Bhopal is so different from Delhi. And these are things that people are not aware of. People think, oh,
Right.
Indians are like this and Americans are like this. And that's not how life is it?
Right.
So that is where I think we need to be brave and talk about ourselves, because I think because of the stigma against, I think this concept of being not being able to voice their opinion. I think a lot of people are not willing to put their stories out there,
Hmm.
and especially because of trolls. Because it is a very big thing which people are doing these days. There are a lot less people who are writing true stories compared to a lot more people who just put in a one line statement saying, hey, you suck, you know.
Right.
And that creates a big fear of people saying, hey, what if I say something and this other person gets offended?
Hmm.
And it's really scary. I know it is scary because as the chief editor of my magazine, a lot of stories come on my I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. But you'll see a lot of submissions at the
Yes,
magazine. Yeah.
exactly. And I see a lot of submissions, and often even I question that should I put this out there? But then it is my responsibility to be true to what we stand for, which is diversity in
Hmm.
conversations, whether I agree with the perspective or not. So that's part of what I am talking about.
And that's a really brave thing to do. Like, you packaged it so well. You framed it really well in this day and age, social media, and it does seem as if we're separating more and more. To stay true to that calling, to that objective of bringing diverse voices. That is a brave thing to do because, like you said, I mean, and you're more than welcome. Please do share your experience with it. I would assume that would almost open you up for more vitriol, for more trolling, because you do include, the diverse voices, and people just, I don't know what it is, but we just don't want to hear. A lot of people don't want to hear that broad range of voices. Do you guys
Yes.
see that a lot? Do you feel like you're making a more positive impact than hearing from those detractors, if you will, because of, people just so afraid of change?
Uh, where, According to this, my experience, I have seen that I tend to completely negate negative feedback. Because unless it is a person who is actually worth my time in
Mm-hmm.
terms of a perspective, because I'm open to being wrong. I say, if you can prove me wrong, please do, because I am sure my perspective is not right 120%. I could be completely wrong in the way I see a subject. But it is often that when you look at a perspective from another person's point of view, you could be like, wow, I didn't even think about
Mm-hmm.
that. And this is incredible. And where I'm concerned, like when we started doing our YouTube videos, I'm not talking about writing here, but this is just an example. I had a very close friend come up and say, "Hey, you know what? Your videos are really long, and it just puts me off. I'm a working mother. I don't have time for seeing a 30-minute video." And I was like, "You know what? We're just starting out, and this is something I'm trying. And did you see the video? Could you tell me like what do you think, what could I cut out, what do you think I should improve on?" She's like, "Oh, I didn't see the video. I don't even read the articles that you write." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Fine. So then I completely just let go of what she's saying, because
Mhm.
unless it's someone giving me impact which I can use, there's really no point of paying attention to such information. It is just it should just wash over you, kind of thing. So I try to, because there is so much negativity in the world,
Mhm.
but to counter it, every single person has a positive perspective as well. And
Yeah.
Paul, it is, I have to say this out to every single person out there. For every negative person you will meet, there are at least 10 positive people out there who are willing to support you. You just need to bid your time and wait for it.
Mhm.
And that's how it is.
No, and that's a good comment. It's just like with anything else, if you're happy, you don't usually. If you're happy about something someone else is doing, you're usually content, and it makes you feel good, and you internalize it, and it that helps push you through your day. Whereas if someone has done something to really tick you off, you let everybody in the world know it. So I think you're absolutely right to focus
Yes,
on the silent 10 people versus that one loudmouth who's just mad or trolling about something. Because it
exactly.
is true. We tend to do that when we're upset. We tell more people than when someone's made us happy. So let's talk about I love to pick your brain because of where you've been in your life, where you are now, and what you're doing. From your perspective, what are some of the unique barriers to sharing our culture from your own experience and maybe from some of the writers and the submitters at your magazine? What are some of those, and listeners, Aditi and I had this conversation off air, but for you, I feel it's important to frame it. I am very aware as a white male in America that I have a perspective that is pretty ignorant to a lot of things, a lot of experiences. And Aditi's been wonderful to come on and agree to talk about this stuff with us. So when I ask her these questions, she's already prepared and she knows this is why I'm asking them. But I think it's important. I think it's important for us to frame that conversation and try to understand what other people do or have been experiencing. So Aditi, for that, the unique barriers to sharing your culture, your cultural experiences in your writing. What are those things?
I think the first thing would be fear, because that, as I mentioned, there are so many trolls out there, and those are imaginary trolls, because unless you put your work out there, you're not even going to have even a couple of eyeballs. So first, I think that's the first barrier you need to overcome. I think the second barrier to overcome is to accept the fact that people do not know about a lot of things. Like, you would, I would assume, not know about the fact that Bombay is different. Mumbai used to be called Bombay, and people are very passionate about whether they call a city Bombay or Mumbai. That's a very niche thing that a lot of people do not even know about,
Right.
and people outside of India or Bombay even don't even care about it, kind of thing. So these are like small, tiny things that matter, and but if you unless you bring them up in conversation, and unless you're a Bombayite or a Mumbai wala, as they would say, no one would care, But it is important to accept the fact that people don't know about stuff, and that's okay. It's completely fine for someone to be ignorant about something, as long as they're willing to be aware about it.
Right.
If you My husband says this beautiful thing that I don't know where he's read it from, but he says it to me, that it is important to know what you don't know.
Yes.
It is fine as long as you are aware of what you know and what you don't know, but don't pretend to know what you don't know.
Right.
you know as long as you're willing to accept the fact that, hey, you know what, I don't know about this, let me read about it, or let me talk to someone about it with an open mind. If you see about our magazine also, I mentioned that we are looking for open minded parents, and we are willing to talk to any open minded parents and put any perspective out there. We are willing to take that brave stand for any writer out there, because there are people out there who are scared to say something because they think that their perspective is not important.
Right.
But every single story is important. Every single voice is important. Like I mentioned, and it is every single life is important. You do not. People tend to presume a lot. They think that, oh, this person looks like this, sounds like this, or has this certain thing, is going to be just like that. And that's not how it is. Talking about you, I would say, like, what about you? Sorry, what you were mentioning earlier. I want to bring up my mom. She's from another generation, of course. And in Kuwait, there used to be only one channel, Kuwait TV. Okay. And there you get television, which is cut off. Like, you don't see any kissing scenes. No, anything that is over PG is edited out. The
Oh,
television
wow.
you see is completely sober. Okay. So for the longest time, I did not even know that there is something in those scenes. Okay. So when I watched television in America, I was like, hey, I didn't know this scene was in this in the show. Or, I didn't know this was a PG-14 television. And I became so aware about television ratings because once I had my children. Because in India, no program or no television show has a rating, which has a very big issue, because Indian parents tend to show every single show, watch every single show in front of their kids, and most of the shows, unfortunately, are not appropriate for kids.
Oh, okay.
That's Yeah, so that's just one of the examples about things that people are not aware of, and unless we increase the awareness, people are going to be like, oh, you know what, I'm fine in my bubble, and
Yeah.
things are fine. So these are a few of the things that I think people need to be more aware of. And I think the fourth thing would be to be able to agree to disagree. I'm so sorry to say, a lot of people are like, hey, you know what I know best, and that's fine.
Hmm.
And that's not how it is. You should be able to accept the fact that, hey, your perspective just might be wrong.
Yeah.
Because often I've had conversations and I've said something, and I'm not never scared to voice my opinion. I have an opinion on everything. So I voice my opinion, and a lot of times I've been proven wrong. I've been told that, hey, you know what, no, this is not something, you don't know the history behind it. And I'm like, hey, you know what, hey, that makes a lot more sense now, and I totally get it now. So those are some of the things that people need to understand, I think.
I think, and that's a great segue into what I wanted to ask you next, because you and I are sitting here having this
Yeah.
conversation at the end of March in 2018. Listeners, you'll actually hear this in May of 2018. But one of the, exactly what you were just talking about, thinking we know what we don't know kind of perspective, and being closed off to hearing these voices. Aditi, I don't know how much of a, popular pop culture fan you are, but in America, one of the hot button issues lately has been people of color and women being represented in superhero movies, and the kickback that those movies have received, because some people don't want to be open to seeing a black superhero or a woman superhero, right? They want their superheroes packaged in a certain way, and they don't want anything different. And Paul's opinion, those two movies were stellar. I loved them. They were fantastic. They were better than a lot of this garbage that we see lately. So it's so important to help people feel comfortable and feel brave to share those. And when you were answering that question, you made me jot down another question that I hadn't thought about again, which is why I'm so thrilled to have you on here. So you were talking about, this is something I don't get. And I was watching an episode of Love. It's a Netflix series. And it was just so profound for me as a male. Two women were sitting on the couch, and one was having a relationship issue, and her friend was trying to help her. And she turned to her friend and she said something, I'm paraphrasing. She said something along the lines of, you need to act like a man. A man would just take up space. They wouldn't ask for permission in this. And I really resonated with that, because I've done another talk show podcast where I used to talk to religious minorities and try to understand their perspective. And I got that same kind of feedback that, my voice isn't important. Nobody wants to hear my voice. I don't feel like I have the right to share my voice. And for me, that was just such a revelation. So, Aditi, you said that when you were answering that one in relation to the stories at the magazine and some of the things you get. Can you help us understand, maybe, this may not be a fair question, but can you help us understand why there are, what contributes to that? What environment makes a person feel like their voice isn't important? Because that's one I really struggle to understand.
Uh, you should never ask this question to an Indian woman, Paul.
Real? See, there we go,
Yes,
listeners.
because I'll give you an example,
Okay.
which just might surprise you. I don't know if it would or not, but here goes. I got married. It was the second day of my marriage. So in India, the second day you have a lot of small games that you play with your husband in front of all relatives and family friends, and then people come visit you. They bring gifts for you because you're the new bride, and this lady who is a friend of my mother-in-law's, she came to visit me. Now this lady is the owner of a school. She is profound in her experience worldwide because she had lived in London, and she came to me and she's like, oh, wonderful, it's so nice that and she's speaking in English, she's got an accent and all that. So she's speaking and she's like, oh, you know what, be completely comfortable in knowing that you're a second class citizen from today onwards, because you're going to be second to every single wish that your husband has, and you just need to know that. And that moment has remained with me till today, and that's something I bring up so often because it is ridiculous the amount of uh, pushback that women get from other women, especially from my mother's generation, about how important it is to be submissive to the males in our environment, be it our husbands, our sons, our brothers, and I think that's a lot of what contributes. In India, it is done outright. I don't know how it is in America, unfortunately, because I'm not very, I mean, of course, I've not been in many American households inside, so I don't know. But yes, that's one of the biggest examples I can give. It happens a lot in India, where and every single if you visit our website, I think we have had 5 articles about how feminism is changing in India and how it needs to change in India and how it looks in India and what women are doing differently now. Because it's a hot button issue for most Indian women today, especially of my age. Because we hope and pray and are trying our best that our daughters never feel how we've felt, especially after marriage. I mean, I must give credit to my parents because I was an only child for 10 years. I have never had a problem feeling I was less than ever. But it happens to a lot of women. They do not feel comfortable sharing what they've experienced. They do not feel comfortable voicing what they want. They expect their husbands to be the first people to go outside and participate in events or be representatives of the family or do stuff. Whereas in my family, if there's a school meeting, I'm the person who goes. If there's anything happening regarding to the kids or a lot of things, I'm the person who goes. But if you see in a lot of other things, it's not because of a situation. It's just because by design that the husband goes.
Okay.
So that's just one of the things that happens, and that's what it's very funny that you mentioned this, because this is an exact quote from an article that one of the writers has written for us, which I made a quote of and a graphic out of, where girls are taught to take very little space.
Wow,
we are
okay.
expected to take little space in everyone's lives.
Did you know that this episode of Horrible Writing is brought to you by my first novel called Chasing the Demon, which you can find on Amazon now. Order it today. Paperback goes out right away. It will release digitally on June 10th. It's a thriller adapted from the first season of my Subject Found audio drama. It follows Jared Strong, a man who is haunted by a memory from his childhood that drives his passions as an adult, drives him into the forests of the Pacific Northwest to chase a demon that's been haunting him since his youth. He has given up a lot in this struggle, and he might have to give up more. If you're enjoying this show, If you enjoy thrillers, if you like stories that are just fun to adventure along with, pick up a copy of Chasing the Demon today, or tell a friend to pick up a copy. Or both of you pick up a copy. If you do, I want to thank you in advance. And of course, as always, I want to thank you for your listens. Now, let's get back to this interview with Aditi. Wow.
So,
see, and wow, how weird is it that I happen to use a quote from a TV show that can really, but that's, again, it's so profound. And that's why I was so excited when you pitched this idea, because I feel I have so much to learn. I'm one of those dorks that I will, when I get on Netflix, if I'm wearing my glasses, if I don't have my glasses on, I can't read subtitled movies. But if I've got my glasses, I love subtitled movies because you can learn so much. You can't learn everything, and I'm not trying to claim that. But there's just so many things to learn. I'm like a newborn, you know what I mean? When I watch a movie that's actually filmed in another country, and all the scenes are in another country, and all the scenery is, there's just so many little things you can pick up on, and it's such a rich experience. I love it. So these things are important. How do you do that at your magazine then? How do you foster a platform where it's safe for these voices to speak out, especially understanding a little better what you just shared? What do you do, and how do you get those voices in the first place where they can feel like they can reach out to you and share their story?
firstly, I make sure that our platform is open for everyone. It's open for kids. It's open for new writers. It's open for any person who wants to write. Even our YouTube channel, because I know a lot of people would rather speak than write. That's the only reason we have a YouTube channel, is because I just want stories out there. Because like you, Paul, I am a geek for stories. Someone said this about me, and I loved it, which is why I'm sharing it. That I've never met a stranger in my life. As long as the person smiles back at me, I'll have a conversation. Mm-hmm. So I love hearing about people, because I feel I have one life, and I want to learn as much about the world and the people in it, because it's the people that make up this world. And that's so important, that every single person who wants to learn has stories out there. And I think that's what you and I are doing. We're trying to get as many people out there sharing their stories, for all the others out there who are willing to listen and learn and experience along with us. So I think that's what it is. And as far as fostering it is concerned, I have a very strict policy about not being offensive. Any comments are moderated by me. So anything that is horrible is read by me, and I delete it. Okay. I know I'm not supposed to delete it, but I don't want any writer reading bad comments, because that's not what they're doing for me. Right. I want people to get positive feedback only, and unless it is, of course, a genuine response. I mean, if it's just like, you suck, I will not publish it. Or if it's spam, I don't publish it. But if it is a genuine response, of course I publish that. I mean, because it's about having a healthy argument. Yes. That's very important. But if someone just said, hey, you know what, this doesn't make any sense, or unless you prove the fact that you're saying something which has an established thing, then it's fine. That's, of course, because we are all about having positive, encouraging, healthy, diverse conversations. That's what Raising World Children is all about.
That's awesome. And in the people who just want to say nasty things, they've got plenty of other places. You're totally in your. I'm with you. I think you're, especially considering what you're doing and what your vision is. That's important, is to protect those people who are sharing their voices. And exactly. I love that. I don't have any problem with that, because haters, they've got a bazillion platforms. They can go be nasty with other people. Yes. So and help. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry. And sorry, I was just saying, I feel like a very mother hen with everyone who writes with us. So especially when my writers get picked up by other platforms, or I've had a couple of writers be reached out by parents, and two of them got opportunities locally because of what they've written for us. So that was awesome. So I feel so proud, and then I'm like, I tell everyone about it.
No, I love it. Mother hen for other writers. That is. So what is it like, especially the vast majority of people who listen to this podcast are in America. What is it? And we're very insular. We produce all our music and our movies, and that's what we watch, right? There's hardly a foreign film that rolls into America and just breaks the box offices, unfortunately. So, can you help us understand and maybe be a little more empathetic? What is it like to look at the landscape of movies and music and books and not see your culture represented? What's that like?
I honestly don't experience that. I mean, that's me being brutally honest because I go out there and I search for stuff which is not mine, you know? So, and I was raised on American culture, Paul. I mean, for me, I was raised in Kuwait. So I have seen less of Indian culture compared to American culture, as like visually in television or in books or, stuff like that. But as far as and I feel that if a person really wants to, they can go and find their culture represented. If they don't find it, I think it is your job to make sure it's represented. So I think even if you just write a story and have it published somewhere, because there are a million publishers out there willing to publish stuff, there are many people who are out there who are creating YouTube videos, and there are people doing stuff out there. I think if you have a problem with something, I think you're the first person who is supposed to help solve that problem. I think uh, I'm sorry if anyone feels bad about this. I think we are living in a culture these days who gets offended very quickly. I think we need to understand the fact that if you feel there is a problem, you need to be part of the solution rather than feel that, hey, you know what, we are not represented and this is not good enough. I'm sorry if that's not what you were looking for, but that's how I feel.
No, hey, I told all the listeners of this show in episode 1 that this show was going to be about empowering other writers through candor. And you were very candid. I totally appreciate that. But, I feel, Paul's opinion, we are the masters of our own destiny. And you kind of just said that yourself, right? If you identify an issue, a problem, be part of the solution.
Exactly.
I feel that's the healthy take, right? That's what
Yeah.
pushes us forward. Sometimes even forces us forward when culture doesn't want to. So,
Right.
and that ties in great with what I was going to follow up with.
Uh-huh.
So, obviously you feel a responsibility in creating that presence of that culture, right? I mean, that's the whole
Yes.
thing we're talking about here, anyways.
Yes.
So, what does, if any, pressures does that create on you as a creator yourself?
Oh, yes, that's something that I can answer. Well, I feel it's my responsibility to put as diverse stories out there. So I'm actively looking for people of diverse cultures, of different ways of life, of different perspectives, even those against mine. I'm not sure if that's okay to say it, talk about this right now, but even regarding what's happening right now, this is March. We've just had the March for Our Lives, and I mean, I've been against guns my whole life, and I've been looking actively within our writers and outside about people who have guns and how to be responsible with them, or so you have to. I feel it's personally so important to represent as diverse voices as possible, and to figure out uh, what are people looking for, and how what else can I offer them so that they find what they're looking for in terms of content, because there is so much happening in the world. And Paul, you're a creator yourself. You will agree with me that the social media and trends are changing at like a lightning pace. You create something today, and by tomorrow it's obsolete.
Yep.
So you need to find something that resonates with a person no matter what time they are in. So if you notice on my website, we don't have any dates. I have not kept any dates because all our articles are timeless, and I make sure every article is relevant to any person at any given time. So any article is written in such a way that it is pertaining to different perspective in any given time of reference. So this is something that we need to understand, that some things in life are never going to change, because I totally believe in having a strong foundation and having understanding that no matter what changes on the outside constantly, and as long as we have a strong foundation, the rest of it doesn't really matter. So I think as long as I keep pushing and pushing towards finding other writers and other perspectives, I'll keep doing my job, and I have to keep honest to my mission, which is finding diverse conversations and putting them out there.
That is awesome. So where do you draw your inspiration? What keeps you pushing through and staying focused on this?
My children.
Wow.
The next generation, because I myself, for the longest time, I felt that I wasn't fitting in anywhere, and I know as my children are going to be feeling pretty much the same way, because it actually started with an article that I wrote for Richmond Mom's blog, where I spoke about how we are raising world children. And that's where raising world children actually came from, because my son, for a festival, said, "Hey, I'm American. I don't really want to celebrate an Indian festival." And I completely got it. I understand where he's coming from, because I don't understand a lot of things my mom does. And she does them now. She didn't do them when she was my age. She does them now because she's time has passed and a lot of other things have happened, and of course the Gulf War changed her perspective in a certain way. But things evolve, and but I think today's generation in the multicultural environment needs more than ever to have parents who understand the fact that we cannot possibly live in our bubbles. We need to understand the world in all its glory to be able to understand our own children.
Yeah. And that's beautiful. And you give me chills when you answer that, because that's the important thing. I think we have a responsibility to do that. And that's why I love what you're doing and the work that you're doing out there. And I'm just going to encourage everybody who listens to this episode, don't keep it to yourself. Share this with somebody who does need to hear this. Friend or foe, like Aditi's been saying, get out, help them step outside that bubble. Or if you've got that person who feels like they don't have a voice, you might have a great mechanism, a great platform for them to share their voice. Aditi, what do you think? What's your personal feelings on this? The people who do stay in their bubble, what are they missing out on when they go through life in that bubble?
I was just going to give a caveat to our previous conversations, though, first, is that we need to have healthy arguments. There is a way to put your perspective forward as well. You cannot just say, "Hey, you know what you said is fine, but this is what I'm saying." You need to listen to the person as well. And I think this ties into this question, where when we live in our bubbles, it is unfortunate. It is You might not actually be missing out on anything, because you will not never realize what else you could have experienced. It is only going to have a how would I put it, a ripple effect, as you would say. In time, you will realize slowly and surely that you have been left behind as far as life is concerned. A simple example would be YouTube videos. It is such a trend these days for parents to give their kids YouTube videos and watch those unboxing of the toys and stuff like that. And it seems pretty cool, but it is reality television for kids. And this is just me speaking. I used to let my kids watch it because it was easy. The kids have fun. They just toggle around, and it's completely. It seems like harmless fun, but it's not. That YouTube is not at all monitored by any organization. So you have no clue what your kids might end up watching. I'm completely against kids watching YouTube at all at this point of time, unless someone can explain it to me otherwise. But I am strongly for parents watching YouTube video. I must say that every parent needs to get off whatever they're watching. I don't know what it is, but make sure to put in your time with YouTube videos, and especially what's trending these days, because it is a very big window into what the teenagers or what the 20 somethings are doing, because it is a big window into what is happening in life these days. And that's just something that I would suggest everyone to do.
What about for anybody who's listening to this? They may be an experienced writer. They may be a blogger on their own, or thinking about it, or they just may be somebody who's really identifying with what you're saying here. When you think about that person, and they're feeling voiceless, they're feeling maybe unheard, what would you tell them? How would you encourage them to step out and find that safe place to share their voice and their story?
I think it would be your best bet would be either to go with a publisher, which is medium size or small, which are willing to take in new writers, or Medium. Medium is a great platform to find other writers to connect with. I found it's wonderful. Facebook has a number of groups which allow these days for writers to connect with each other and help you take feedback. And I think once you connect with other writers, it just makes it a little bit easier for you to understand how to better yourself. And I think give a little bit more confidence. I've recently started writing fiction myself, so I'm getting feedback on that. And there's nothing wrong in learning. Don't go into anything expecting to be applauded. Go in willing to learn, and I think you'll be completely fine.
I love that piece of advice. I'm going to steal that from you. I'm going to have to put a meme together for you when we publish this episode. Don't go in expecting applause. I love that. All right. So, hey, listeners, if this is your first episode of Horrible Writing, you may not know this. I'm going to package this a little bit so that you do. At this point in the show, I'm going to ask Aditi to share a horrible writing experience with us. Now, you may be thinking, Paul, why would you do that? She's your guest. Well, there's a reason. I'll tell you after she's done sharing it. But a horrible writing experience is something that she's been through that she is okay with sharing with us. And there is a point to all this, and I promise we'll wrap it up after she's done sharing it. So, Aditi, what is your horrible writing experience?
I would say I will have to go in a little bit of detail, so please bear with me. I started pitching after having my blog for 1.5 years to publications, because my dream was getting into one of those large publications, and I was pitching to everyone from Babbel to Huffington Post to Thrive to everyone. Okay, it's a writer's dream, right? Getting into as a contributor to any one of those big name publications. And I had been trying for 6 months. I didn't hear back from like 40 for like 3-4 months from anyone. I heard back from a few places which gave me feedback, which was awesome. So I could find my voice, figure out what I was doing wrong, those things. So I had pitched for around 45 times or 50 times, I think, before I finally got accepted into Huffington Post for an article which was doing really well already on my own blog, which was about how to teach your kids to deal with predators themselves. And that was awesome. I did wonderfully, and I was so excited. And from there, things just flew for me and personally, and things just went ahead. And then I got accepted into Thrive by Ariana Huffington herself, which was awesome for me. Cut to after raising world children a couple of months ago, as you may know, I got removed from Huffington Post like a million of other bloggers. And it was quite hard, actually, because it was not just because it's Huffington Post. It is because it was sad because they had to do this, because a lot of bloggers were taking money from each other for getting onto the contributor platform, because there was some glitch and they had found a loophole in sharing the link, and it was just unfortunate. And I was so passionately connected to the fact that was the first large publication that I got onto, and it was really sad for me. And it was very hard because it took me those 45-50 tries to finally get into it. And then they just dropped you one fine morning. You get up and you see an email that, hey, you know what, we are removing everything that you've done so far for us, which was like, I think 9 or 10 articles of mine. They just completely removed it, and it just hurts. It really hurts even today, actually.
Yeah, I totally understand that.
Yes. So yeah. It was just it's one of those things, you as a writer, I think as a creative, you just have to keep rolling with the punches, because no matter how far ahead in life you get, I have been featured in Richmond Families magazine as on their inside the actual magazine, and I've contributed as an author. I'm on Thrive. I'm on Richmond Mom's blog, but still, there's that hole in my heart for Huffington Post.
That's totally. I think anybody could relate to that.
So yes. So I would say that no matter what you do as a writer, you'll always be a newbie, and there's no shame in accepting that you have to just keep pitching. And those pitches are wonderful fun to keep doing.
Well, I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine it made you a better writer, that entire experience from having to pitch so often to being able to be featured and then erased from history. Probably made you a better writer and a stronger adult too.
Of course, and it's given me this wonderful story to share with every single writer out there.
Well, and listeners, again, one of the reasons, the major reason I ask is because you can take someone like Aditi and you can listen to what she's been through. And if you listen, you just heard it. You guys don't have the benefit of video like I do, but you can hear it in her voice, how passionate she is about HuffPo, about what she contributed, and about continuing her journey to create and to give that content to the world. And think about the context, 40 or 50 different pitches to the same place. How many times would we give up and not try the 20th time, the 30th time? But she kept pressing, realized that goal, unfortunately, kind of took a turn for her on the end. But at the same time, she's walked away from it. She's got a couple more cool scars to show for it. And she's still pressing forward and creating great things. She did not get discouraged. She kept working and pushing through. You got to keep pushing through. You got to do the hard work and don't walk in expecting applause. I absolutely love that line. So Aditi, let's talk about some of the stuff that you are doing. Maybe some of the stuff you've done recently and some of the things going forward. What can we expect from you?
Well, we have a bunch of cool articles coming out on Raising World Children, of course. So please go and visit us. Yay! And my book is coming out soon, hopefully for Mother's Day, called Strong Roots Have No Fear. So that should be a fun read. It's for parents with young kids to help build a strong foundation, especially if you're living in a multicultural environment or want to learn about how to raise your kids in a multicultural environment.
That is awesome. I'm so excited to hear that you've got a book coming out very soon. So listeners, I will make sure that I get that link in the show note for you so you can go over to the website and just go direct to it or just check out the show notes for more information on that. So Aditi, before you get out of here, you've shared so much, and I do want to thank you because we've talked about sensitive stuff, but important stuff and, stuff that's aimed at making the world a richer, more positive place. You can't go wrong with that kind of stuff. So now there's a bunch of people who have fallen in love with you and they want to follow you out there on the internet somewhere. How can folks find you and contact you?
You can email us at contact@raisingworldchildren.com. You can even send in your any write-ups that you've done if you would like to share with us. We even publish kids' artwork because we love anything written or done by kids. So you can send any of the good stuff to contact@raisingworldchildren.com. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at raisingworldchildren.com. Sorry, not .com, Raising World Children. That's our handle. And me, you can follow at Aditi Wardhan Singh. That's my writer profile on Facebook and Twitter. And you can email me at aditi.ws@gmail.com.
Excellent. I want to thank you one more time because I've been looking forward to this for 2 months now. So this has been, I just feel so much more enriched. And you were so candid and so just open and honest. And I feel personally enriched today, and I know the listeners will too. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Paul. This was so fun. And it was wonderful to be able to share with such an open and honest person as you, because I've been following your work and it's incredible.
Well, we'll see about that. The 2 books are coming out this year. We'll see how incredible it is. No, seriously, Yay! Thank you very much. This has been Horrible Writing, and hopefully after this episode, you suck less than you did at the beginning. I am Paul Sadin, your host extraordinaire. You can find me over on the Twitterverse at Writing Horrible and over at paulsadin.com/horrible-writing. Until next time, suck less.